Today I talk about routines, fear of falling short, and becoming more happy. Hello and welcome to Mind Games episode 61. So I haven't been here for a few days. It turns out my daughter has hives. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, if this is the same in all Englishes. In the US, hives is like an antihistamine reaction or histamine reaction that you get like when you're allergic to stuff when you're little. And I got it all the time. It was really annoying. And now, of course, I passed this wonderful trait along to my daughter. So they kicked her out of the daycare and I've been trying to get her not to itch herself everywhere all week. So here's the very first show of the first week of February, and I'm actually going to film a bunch of shows today because I have all of these great questions that you guys gave me from the week, and I want to get through them all. And so you might kind of get used to this shirt and this room, and I apologize for that. Obviously, it's all going to happen on the same day, but we won't put them all out on the same day so that you guys aren't inundated with shows. But look forward to at least 3 awesome shows based on the great questions I got this week from y'all. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Kyle asks, I'm playing a game I love for a living. I love my team, but being unhappy is affecting my performance. How do I become more happy?
I feel like this is a fundamental question of life, Kyle, and it's something that is both not answerable and also is something you'll be answering every day and forever, and it's something that everybody is kind of wrestling with all the time, because I don't think that there are so many things that the world tells us are correlated with happiness that are not. And so people are always seeking, they're always seeking 2 different things. They're seeking happiness and they're seeking whatever the world tells them to seek or whatever their life is making them seek or all these sorts of conflicting things. And so I can give you my answer for how I become more happy, and hopefully that's helpful in some way. So I have 2 things that I've used to kind of discover happiness in what I'm doing. So I don't think that happiness is connected so much with what you are doing, but rather how connected you are with what you are doing at a given moment. And so the first thing that I have discovered for me is gratitude. Gratitude is the precursor to joy, and joy is happiness at an extreme level. And so the more that I'm able to kind of live in gratitude for the moment, the more happy I am with just everything that's going well and everything that's going wrong. And meditating upon that gratitude, and I don't mean meditating in terms of the actual verb or the practice of meditation. I mean the verb to meditate upon, to think about, to contemplate the things that you could be grateful for and how you are grateful for them. And I don't think that that's normal. And in fact, there's research that shows that if you train yourself in gratitude, if you do gratitude conditioning, that you then more often dwell upon things that you are grateful for and become more happy. So my recommendation would be to do the same thing I do, which is to list 3 things that you're grateful for every day. And what starts to happen is it begins with this very a general kind of thing, oh, I'm so grateful that I'm alive and that I was born, in the 99, the 1% of humanity that's not in abject poverty like the rest of the world, and blah, blah, blah. So these very big things that you kind of feel like you have to be grateful for because it's the chance of it happening. I'm so glad I'm a human and not a plant, these kind of things. And then what happens is you keep doing it day after day after day. You realize that's too boring to just keep saying the same thing over and over, and also it's too distant. That is something that it's possible to be grateful for, but it's not connected to your intrinsic experience in the moment. And so you start listing things I'm so grateful that that I have this office to film this in, and I'm so grateful that my friend texted me right back when I texted him, so I didn't have to wonder about my schedule this afternoon. And so these very, very little things that you can be grateful for along every step of the way. And you start realizing that we take for granted when things happen to us, and we really, really get all angsty about the things that didn't happen properly. And we pay almost no attention to the things that just go along like wonderfully running as a system. So when you start paying attention to those things, you can start enjoying the opportunity more and stop focusing on the opportunity cost. And I think that's kind of like the number one thing that I would recommend. And then number two off of that is simple mindfulness, like being connected with the present moment, getting out of whatever it is you're doing. I noticed when I was in transit to work and back for a number of years, I was absolutely bored. And if I didn't have my music or if I didn't have a podcast to listen to, like I was just really, really frustrated with that waste of time and the cost of, a 1 hour walk and just being like with myself the whole time. When I started meditating and I started doing mindful walking, it got to the point where I would start off with a podcast and it would become so boring within a minute compared to experiencing reality that I would just like, I'd have to shut it off. I'd be like, I get this thing out of my head. And I would just walk and pay attention to the moment and just see everything that, I'm walking by and feel my body moving and feel my body breathing. And that was an experience like unlike any other that I've ever had, and that you can have. And it brought great joy to that moment. It's so enjoyable that I look forward to it, and I regret when it's over and I stop driving because I don't want to give up the opportunity to walk and experience that. So I think that like those two things were the key for me, and maybe they'll help you, maybe they won't. If you want to find a system to use the gratitude thing, I recommend the 5-minute journal. I'll put the link down below or wherever you're seeing this video. Check it out. Just Google search 5-minute journal if you can't find my link. And that is the tool that I use to kick off my gratitude conditioning. And there's a bunch of advice in there and tips and science about that as well. So, yeah, thanks for the question. It was great.
Autumn Johnston asks, how do I get over a fear of falling short when trying to achieve goals, be it personal or work related?
I had to really amp myself up. So I have a constant fear of falling short and being perceived as short. And I think that's the real thing. It's not so much falling short ourselves. Like, if I look at my 3-year-old doing puzzles and he can't figure it out, he doesn't even care. But then when he notices I'm watching him, then he's like, gets all like, this doesn't fit. Where does this go? Because he's in the moment and failure means nothing. But then like when when we have it perceived upon us, that's the real issue our brain has. So I think that like, how do you get over the fear of being perceived as falling short is the question that I always wrestle with. And it's not something that's really solvable. I think that you can reduce it. There's 2 ways to reduce it. One is normalization. So like you just do whatever you're doing over and over again until you get used to that moment and you're not afraid. You have competence that's been risen up. And so your competence tells you you're not going to fall short. And so then you don't. So that's the one kind of way to tackle it. That's kind of automatic within our biology. And then the other thing is that you can kind of find ways to reduce the build-up anxiety. So you have the fear of falling short, and then you dwell on it, and you think about it, and you like build it up into this huge thing, and you imagine all the consequences and all the horrible things that could happen, and it becomes a much larger thing than it actually is. So you got to kill that chain, and it's a really good thing to like practice breathing and mindfulness and all the things that like get you just focused on the moment, and then you only have just the fear of falling short, like the fear of that moment, and none of the extra buildup. And that is a very manageable emotion. That is something that you can like decide, I'm going to do this, oh my gosh, and then you can like jump into it, and actually you get kind of perverse joy out of the act of resisting that emotion in the end. One example I have is that I went to a investor conference recently, and I didn't have a booth or any position, so I had to pitch people walking around on the floor. I had to just like pick a random person who was walking by and like start pitching them about a business idea. And that's really very nerve-wracking. You feel kind of like a con artist or something. And the first day I managed to do 1. And then I went home and I was like, this isn't going to work. Obviously, I want what I'm doing here, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So why can I not get over the fear of talking to these people who are just wandering around and asking them about if they want to give me a bunch of money? And the thing that I did overnight was I connected with my values. I tried to decide that my values, the things that I valued about that experience, about myself, about the journey, about being there that day was greater in power than the things that were holding me back. And then I would go onto the floor and I would think like, okay, I want the result of this. I know that this emotion is going to be frustrating, and you can't really get over the fear of falling short. Like, it's not going to go away. It's always going to be there, so you have to kind of overpower it a little bit. So I would say I really value the result of this, and I know that there's only psychological harm that's going to happen. Like, none of these people are going to punch me. They're probably not even going to feel ill of me. They're mostly going to feel bad themselves because they're like, oh, I feel so bad. You know when you turn those people down on the street that want money for their whatever cause, like the dolphins and whatnot, and you always feel a little bad. You're not really annoyed at them. You're kind of annoyed at them, but mostly you feel guilty, like, oh, I should be the kind of person who does that, but I'm not. So leave me alone. So we make it all about ourselves, and it's really not. Like, it's always all about ourselves for everybody else too. So they're just thinking about themselves. So you can use those kind of like rationalization mechanisms to get over that and then dive into the moment. And once you're in the moment, usually it goes pretty well. It's the start that's the hard part. Once you've started, half the work is done. I think that's a Marcus Aurelius quote.
Joey asks, how do I jumpstart myself into living healthier and having a better routine that will enable me to play LOL better?
Okay, this is a very pertinent question. Thank you so much for asking this. This is fantastic because I give out lots of advice. Lots of people give out lots of advice. There's lots of gurus out there. How do you actually do it? How do you jumpstart a routine? How do you do it if you're lazy like I am, and if you struggle to even be motivated to do the simplest thing besides what brings you the most joy? So, or actually even things that don't bring me joy and I'm just too lazy to worry about it because I'm just playing video games or whatever. That's a lie. I haven't played video games in a long time because now I'm too busy talking about video games. But anyway, I digress. I think it all comes down to habits, and you have unlearning behavior and relearning behavior, or unlearning behavior and learning different behavior, right? So my advice is twofold. Number one, you have to learn forgiveness. You have to forgive yourself constantly, always, forever, every day, every moment. You have to forgive yourself for screwing up and failing. You have to forgive yourself for not doing the thing you wanted to do 20 minutes ago so that you can actually have more of a chance of doing it in the next 20 minutes. Okay? This is like the most important understanding you can come to with yourself, is that you need to be gentle to yourself. You need to be forgiving of yourself and all of your faults, and you need to not see things that you're not doing as a problem. You need to see the things that you are doing as enough and that you want to be more. Okay? Instead of seeing ourselves as parts of a broken what could be, you see yourself as whole and expanding. Okay? So that's the basis. That's the fundamental psychological basis for being able to build routines in a healthy way. Then you can start tackling cutting out routines, and I recommend a couple things. One is like picking something that forces you to do a bunch of stuff all at once. So like, let's say you want to work out every morning really early. So if you like can make yourself, no matter what, always like set the alarm and just get up and like do the workout, that will start affecting other things. Like you will probably not eat before you work out because you're going to try to rush to get out the door, and so you can eat afterwards, which is okay, that's actually debatable whether that's healthy or not, but I think it is. And if you're a fan of intermittent fasting as I am, then you can check that out by Googling intermittent fasting. And if you're a fan of breakfast, then you could do the opposite. And then like you'll notice you're really tired, so you'll want to get to sleep on time. So you might start going to sleep earlier. So all of a sudden this working out habit like starts affecting your evening as well. And so pick really high quality habits that you want to start that kind of have a spidery effect on other stuff in your life, and then use bundling. So I want to go to the gym, but I know that I'm not going to. So I don't listen to podcasts ever. Like when I'm working, when I'm having fun, when I'm walking, like I don't, actually when I'm walking, sometimes I do, but I don't allow myself to listen to the podcast that I really, really like unless I'm at the gym, and then I bundle it together. So then if I go to the gym, I can listen to the podcast, and now I'm excited to do that. Now that's really great for things that are like conscious, like decisions to go places. how do you then like work on the habits that are just like things you have to remember? Like, oh, after a game, I want to write some things down, but I never remember to because I'm always so annoyed at the game or whatever. To take notes. So for that, you need to build systems that take away the decision. Like the problem is that you're remembering to do it, but you don't need to do that nowadays. You can set up an automated system that reminds you to do stuff. I do that all the time for things that I don't care about. You don't want to have to build a habit and then also have to build a reminder for the habit. You just got to get the habit settled over 2 or 3 weeks. So outsource the trigger for the habit, okay? Put it on your phone, put it within the game. Find some way of automating the thing that says like, do this. I wanted to journal more, so I got an app that like gives me a reminder every morning to journal, and it does it according to my calendar when I have an open space. And then it gives me a prompt so that I don't have to think of something to write about. And then I journal, and I found myself journaling like really regularly, and then it became a habit. So my recommendation is to understand that the fundamental area for building routines is the start. That's the hardest part. That's the most difficult part. And if you put all of your effort onto just the start and the success trigger and just the one first thing you have to do to get your foot moving, the rest of it will follow. So focus on the start. By the way, focusing on the start, I use the 5-minute journal, which I mentioned earlier in this show, to focus on like 3 priorities for every day. And I think there was a quote. I just saw this today. I remember I downloaded a new taskless app called AnyDo. And the first notification that popped up was like people who have 5 or less tasks in a day are like 100% blah, blah, blah more effective or whatever. So the idea is really simple. Like you have 2 or 3 things that you prioritize in a day and you prioritize the start of that thing. One example is I wanted to write a blog post and it became this big thing that I couldn't do very habitually. So I made my habit to open Google Documents and write the first line of a blog post. And like some days I would only open Google Documents and write the first line. But then some days I would like have momentum and I would just continue with it. And so you want to like focus on that starting hurdle. Think in your mind, what is the very, 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 very first thing that I run into as a barrier when I want to start something? That is the only thing that matters. That's the only thing you have to tackle. You just have to get over that barrier. Don't worry about all the rest of the stuff. Like worry about that very first barrier and find a way to systematically get over it. By either automating it or reducing it or making it your number 1 priority and saying that hurdle is so small and all I have to do is put my foot over it and then I have momentum sometimes. And if I don't have momentum, remember what I said before, forgive yourself and just like give it up for the day. But always do it and understand that you can do it and then like not continue. So that's my recommendation. This is not something easy. You're asking a very tough question that people struggle with. Like if people could easily jumpstart routines and living healthier, like everybody would have a 6-pack and everybody would be a Diamond 5 or Diamond 1 or a Mad Challenger player in League of Legends, and every single person would be a Grandmaster Elite, whatever. In Counter-Strike, I freaking forget the rankings. This is bad. Golden Eagle? I'm going to get lots of flack for this from my CSGO watchers. My apologies. I should memorize the rankings better. But anyway, yeah, so if it were easy, everybody would be good at it. It's not easy. So understand that if you can hack this, if you can understand this, and if you can learn this about yourself and get better at it over time, that you are solving one of the grand riddles of life, and it's just going to get better from there. So I want to end on a quote, and I chose a quote that kind of like fits with the theme of today. It's from Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's like Vietnamese. Could be not. But he's a Buddhist philosopher, or maybe like a meditator. He's a religious guru. I'll put it that way. The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it.